This is Movers and Shakers, where we interview the upcoming generation of Make It Happen multifamily investors to share their story.
Welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Jake and Gino, multifamily investor, educator, father, mentor, and I am joined by my co-host, my brosif, Joshua Ryan Rusin, community director of Jake and Gino. Josh, how are you today?
Gino, doing well. Very excited. Yesterday, just locked down a flight to come stay with you and the family for a week. That's very exciting on the horizon. Got another trip coming up in March as well to go down there. Got a John Maxwell conference, a money mixer, going to GrowthCon, and a lot of personal development and making it happen on the rise. Gino, what's going on with you?
So I just found out that I'm going to have another child, my seventh, coming with me for the week. Right, Josh? I got another number 7 hanging out with me. So got to go to some food shopping. Earth Fair, Josh. What happened to Earth Fair? See what happens when you don't get your debt, and all of a sudden you got competition. Man, you could be here one day and gone the next. So it's all about people, systems, and culture. That's what's going on in this economy. Things are changing so quickly. That's why we love multifamily. It's all about buying hard assets. We can go into the benefits of it, but we've got a great guest today, Josh. Let's introduce our guest and let's really dive into the story.
All right. Today we have Kyle Mitchell. A little bit about Kyle. So he's a real estate entrepreneur who has a focus on multifamily syndication and currently has 17 million in assets under management. He's the managing partner and co-founder of Limitless Estates, whose visions is to provide A-class living to lower income housing by putting the residents first and instilling a sense of community while inspiring others to do the same. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, Kyle, let's back it up before you got into multifamily or even real estate in general. What were you doing? Why was real estate, on the horizon? How did you get into it?
Yeah, so my previous career was a regional manager for a golf management company. So it's very similar to a property management company for an apartment, but just for golf courses. So, I did that for about 15 years, and I first started real estate investing while I had that W-2 job, and I was really just trying to create some more passive income. I had a very bad experience in high school, actually, with the stock market. Gave $2,000 to a broker, and a couple months later it was gone. And so I did not like the feeling of being out of control like that. So I just naturally gravitated towards real estate and started buying single family homes to start. So I got my education through podcasts and books. And I quickly learned that it's very difficult to scale with single family homes, especially when you're buying turnkey. You're losing a lot of that equity on day one when you're purchasing turnkey. So then I started looking for another vehicle, and at that time my company was shrinking. I wanted to be growing, and so I started looking for another career path as well. I found multifamily, and for me it just clicked. I fell in love with it, and the business metrics of it totally made sense to me because of my past career, and I left my job about 11 months after that to pursue it full time.
So Kyle, do you mind if we dive into the single family turnkey space since you have a little bit of experience?
Yeah, let's do it.
So what drew you to it, number one, and number two, what shortcomings were there with the short-term current with the single family turnkey in your estimation?
Yeah. So the thing that drew me to it was, at that time I was working 6 days a week, 80 hours a week. So the term turnkey, which is completely subjective, but appealed to me. And
excuse me, Kyle, I couldn't get the words out of my mouth because to me, it's like, there's no such thing as single family turnkey. It's really difficult. So I couldn't even say the words myself. So you said it beautifully.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. So, that definitely appealed to me, just getting some passive income. I started listening to podcasts, and I think my biggest mistake at that time is I did not look at other avenues and look, my single family turnkeys have done okay. They haven't done fantastic, but they've been okay. But I think if I would have looked at other niches and really educated myself on other areas, I may have gone a different route.
So why didn't you go that different route? Why did you go into the single family turnkey? Was it because it was more comfortable? Because you can say, hey, I've already bought a house and this is very comfortable to me and I could never do that multifamily thing. That's a beast in the corner over there. What were your feelings on it?
Complete mindset thing. I wasn't even thinking about apartments because I did probably in the back of my mind think that's for people who are rich and a different type of people. And so single family to me kind of made sense because I had my single family home at that time that I was living in, and I actually decided to sell that, take all my equity and put it into real estate. I really wish I would have put it into multifamily at that time, but even still, I learned a lot through the turnkeys and the process, and that led me to multifamily.
See, Kyle, I like the single family turnkey. If you can buy a piece of land and build 30 or 40 yourself, and then you own the single families yourself as the builder and you're controlling that entire process, you've got a brand new product. You're renting them out yourself. You have the property management company. You're multifaceting. You're creating a community with a pool and a clubhouse. I think that's a fantastic model. That is the future because, millennials don't want to buy. They're going to rent those homes. I think as an investor, it might be a little more difficult to buy one or two or three. If you have the ability to buy that entire, 10 or 12 in that neighborhood, that may be an okay strategy because it's sort of scaling, right? Because you have brand new houses, which are going to have little deferred maintenance. But I think the average single family turnkey, when they get into it, they'll buy one here, one there. And that's a lot harder to scale. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Two things on that. Number one is that, if you're doing it all yourself, you can take advantage of that equity. Like I said before, when you're buying one-offs, you're really losing the equity on day one, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
to the turnkey provider, to the person flipping the house, to the property management company. So there's that. And then the other thing is if you have a controlled area where all those houses are, you can have one property management company who's seeing the property on a day-to-day basis. I was talking to someone yesterday. If I have 9 houses, right, and I've sold 3 since, but they're in 3 different markets and they're spread across the city. They're maybe in the same city, but they're not on the same block. How often does your property manager see that house?
Mm-hmm.
I would guess maybe once a year when they do the yearly inspection. But if you're not turning over a resident, maybe they don't even see it once a year. You have a
Mm-hmm.
multifamily property, you have on-site management. They're there 6 or 7 days a week, so they have their eye on your property. So that's one of the huge differences between single family and multifamily.
I love that.
I think you brought up a few key points there. So when you look, and I don't mean to bash single family turnkey. I think they're better than some of the alternatives. However, like you said, there's not a lot of equity day one. They're trying to value them on the income approach rather than comps. So a lot of times they're getting top of the market pricing. And when you're looking at management, probably a 10% management fee you're paying. And then if a resident turns, we're at 0% occupancy, we're paying the whole mortgage. And when they move in, they're probably taking half, if not all, of that first month's rent as a fee to move the new person in. So then in contrast, we compare that to multifamily, much lower fee to manage it. There's obviously economies of scale, and you're able to control it based on the income approach, right? And that's truly how the property is valued and should be valued on.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And, the whole thing with turnkey, I said it's completely subjective. So they may already have a resident in there when you buy it. You think it's in good shape. If you were to walk that property, you would probably see a lot of repairs needed to that property. So, on the first couple of turnovers, I was spending a couple $1,000s more than I anticipated just to get the property back to really what, a rent-ready property should look like.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So, Kyle, what did you learn from your experience working with your former employer as far as because every industry sort of overlaps? I was in the restaurant industry. It's really people, systems, and culture there. What did you learn from your former employer and, starting into the multifamily?
Yeah, same thing, people, systems, and culture. But, I was in charge of 250 employees on a day in, day out basis. And to manage those types of employees, you've got to do a lot of things. You got to implement the systems. You've got to hire the right people. You've got to hold people accountable. And you've got to create a very good culture in order to keep 250 people who you're managing day to day happy and working hard. So those are all the same things. And being from a property management company, we had a landlord that we had to deal with. So I understand what the property management company is going through, how they need to cut costs and save margin. So I'm on the other side of it now, which is great because I do know some tricks of the trade on how they may try and save some cap or save some money to get their margins larger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm using that to my advantage for sure.
Did you set up in your new entity any kind of core values, mission statement, core values? I'm sure you had it for the 250 employees, but did you start creating one for your own?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got it on our business card. Create win-win-win scenarios is number one. Helping others and adding value.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our 3 things. And so I think if you really start with those things are going to flow very freely. And
Mm-hmm.
helping others is a big thing for us. And we do that through our meetups and other various things. But I really enjoy it as well. And it gives me a lot of joy and happiness while I'm building our company.
Wow, to that point, so our core values here, it's kind of our operating system, and ours are people first, growth mindset, unwavering ethics, extreme ownership, and then make it happen. And I know that if those are my guiding principles from every action I do, that I'm going to act in line with the company and be a good representation of that, right? And if I can instill that and lead by example in others, I know that we'll be all beating to the same drum and making it happen and growing in the right direction. So love that.
Kyle, did you like golf, by the way? Were you a golfer?
I was. So me and
Okay.
my wife were both golfers. We both played professionally. I played at a much lower level, just around Southern California, but my wife played at a much higher level. So we're both in the golf business our whole lives, and we don't play as much anymore. It's very difficult to go from competitive to recreational, and so
Mhm.
we're still dealing with that a little bit, but we get out there every now and then.
So how was it working with your passion? Was it difficult for you?
The thing is that I had a passion for playing golf. And so when I got into the golf business, it was a natural step for me. But a lot of people think that I would go in there and I get, to play golf every day. And it's
Mhm.
really the last thing I wanted to do was play golf while I was working on a golf course, because I was there for
Yes.
12 to 14-hour days, right? So it was the last thing I really wanted to do. But, at the same time, you are walking into a golf course. My office overlooked the golf course. It's definitely not a bad life.
So then what was the allure? If it's not a bad life, you're hanging out in golf, you're sort of doing your passion. What was the allure to get into multifamily then?
Yeah, so a couple things. Our company was shrinking at the time when I really wanted to grow and expand. And with my type A personality, that's just how it was. And the opportunities were not there. And the golf business really is a shrinking industry right now, unfortunately. It's expensive. It takes a long time to play. So not a ton of new people are coming into that industry. So, I naturally wanted to look for another opportunity at that point, and I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I wanted to work for myself. And again, when I found multifamily, it just clicked in my head. I have no other way to say it than that. And I just fell in love with it. So 11 months later, I was gone.
Yeah, so let's recount that journey. You dive in, you find multifamily, you fall in love. What were your next actions, and what was your journey into growing and scaling your portfolio?
Yep. First action was make sure my wife and I were on the same page. We set our goals. We made sure that if I were to leave my job and go for something, that we were on the same page. But we educated ourselves first. We took an online coaching course. From there, we also did one-on-one coaching for some time, and made sure that we were fully educated. Single family and multifamily are completely different games. And you can definitely get away with doing single family on your own. But when you get into multifamily, there's a lot of extra zeros. There's investor money on the line as far as what we do, which is multifamily syndication. So it's a completely different game. And if you're getting into multifamily, you've got to educate yourself. So, and then 3 months later, we started a meetup. And 6 months after that, we started a podcast. And then we started 2 more meetups. And it was really, expanding our network, educating ourselves, and then taking massive action.
So everybody, let me recount that what Kyle just said, because it's really important. Number one, he decided. And let's rewind even before that. I don't know if you read the book Big Shifts Ahead by Chris Porter, but that book Big Shifts Ahead is really talking to Kyle, because the demographics of golf, it's like the demographics of owning a single family home. That's why multifamily is so hot. People are getting out of the golfing industry. He sees that. People don't have time to spend 4 hours on a golf course and spend thousands of dollars. That's the reality of it. So you can see it in sports. Certain sports are getting more popular and certain getting less with the instant gratification and the people don't have that ability to focus anymore. Josh, off on a tangent. I'm listening to a song from the 70s in the car with my son. 70s and 80s music back then, songs would be 6 and 7 minutes long. Now you're lucky if a song eclipses 3 minutes. I'm listening to Guns N' Roses' November Rain. It's an 8-minute song. It's amazing, and we're listening to it. And so the mindset for people that have that it's just amazing to me. So read that book. I didn't mean to get off on a tangent, but I just thought it was really funny. Big Shifts Ahead, everybody, by Chris Porter. It's an amazing book. It's going to talk about demographics. It's going to talk about why multifamily, and it's going to talk about why Airbnb sprung up, why companies like Zipcar are there, companies like Uber, all these companies, and you're going to see the demographics, why this is playing out, and why multifamily, with the immigration coming through, with a lot of people who have student debt and people want to share space. There's a lot of reasons why multifamily is hot. So the first thing Kyle did was he decided, Josh. The second thing he did was I think he created the core values. I think he knew what he wanted. You have to create those core values for your company and for your family. The third one, he's on the same page with his wife. That's really important to get your significant other, your spouse, your family on board with you. The next one, number 4, is education times action equals results. He went out and educated himself. He didn't go out on a whim. He didn't just take Jack. He actually went out and took a lot of education. The next one, number 5, he did meetups. And number 6, podcasts. So everyone write that down. Meetups and podcasts. He's probably getting out of his comfort zone, but that's how he starts networking. That's how he starts learning, getting on podcasts and doing meetups. You're going to meet people who are a lot smarter than you, have a lot more experience than you. And that's what you want to do. Surround yourself with like-minded people who are smarter, who you can learn from. And number 7, just expanding the network. That's really important. So kudos to you. I mean, how long did it take you to get your first deal after you decided to go through all those steps?
18 months, actually. 13 until we had it under contract, but 18 months. So it didn't happen overnight. And to be honest, looking back now, I'm glad it didn't, because I really would not have been ready if it happened 6 months. Would we have figured it out?
How long?
Probably
How long was that number?
18 months.
18 months, everybody. It wasn't 8 months. It wasn't 3 months. Kyle's a farmer planting seeds. Some of those seeds didn't come out because it rained. Some of them didn't come out because there's a lot of drought. Thank God some didn't come out, right? But 18 months is a long time. But when you look back at it, it takes you that long to educate yourself, to learn the market, to find brokers, to find partners, to find investors. All of these things take a little bit of time to cultivate, and there's a swell. And after that first deal, you have the momentum, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, you probably got your second deal, or 5 months, or whatever it is. That first deal is the most important. And as Jay Scott says, you either have no deals or you have a lot of deals. You're not going to have just one deal in the real estate space. So talk to us about that first deal, 18 months. What pain did you go through to find that first deal?
Yeah, a ton. It was calling brokers every single week and having most of them not call me back or even answer the phone because I don't have any units at that point. So we just stuck to a system. We knew what our plan was, and it was just consistent action. And consistency, I think, is the key, right? There's a lot of people that'll start off, but then kind of filter out. And I think if you're just consistent with what you do, we're consistent with our monthly newsletter communication. Our meetups are the same day, time, at the same location. Our podcast every Monday. So consistency is really what helped us out. But we finally got that property because my wife and I were driving to Tucson from Southern California once a month while we had our day jobs still. And well, actually at this time, when we got this property, I had just left, but we were still making those trips while we had full-time W-2s. We would leave at 2:30 in the morning, get there at 9 a.m. And on our way, we would call brokers, or the day before, I would call the brokers and tell them we were coming into town. And on one of those drives, one of the brokers called me and said, "Hey, Kyle, we actually just got the keys to this deal. I haven't seen inside any of the units. Just seen the outside. Do you want to tour it?" And our property management company that we chose was going to be with us the entire day. So it was a perfect opportunity. We were the first people to see this property. We liked it. We toured the comps with our property management company that day. And a couple weeks later, it was under contract.
Wow. So, Josh, another quick recap. Everyone write this down. Number 1, rejection. And you're going to get a lot of rejection. Create a credibility book out there. Jake and Gino, we love to create credibility books. It gives you that business plan. Number 2, consistency. I mean, Kyle's great. Getting on those podcasts every Monday, doing your monthly meetups, calling the brokers, being consistent is really important in life. You commit and then you figure it out. And number 3, Kyle's not a tire kicker. Kyle's actually going out and looking at properties. He's not just calling the brokers. He's following through and getting on the property and actually talking to the brokers and building rapport. And when a broker has a property, he's going to call, not Gino, because Gino hasn't gone out and talked to the broker and visited the property. They're going to call Kyle first because Kyle's the one who showed the desire and the willingness to go out there. And when they hear that he's been on the road for 6 hours, they know that he's serious. So that separates Kyle from everyone else. And that's what brokers want. Brokers ultimately want closers and people who are going to show up. So, I mean, kudos to you. What did you see in this property? What attracted you to this first deal?
Yeah. So when you look at the deal, it's not the most attractive property, but I don't buy for attraction. I really buy because, the numbers make sense and for cash flow. So, the first thing I loved was that the number on the sign and the outside of the building was disconnected. So I absolutely love that. They didn't have a third-party professional management company. They had a single-family home provider that was doing it. So the only way that someone could lease up at that property was to call that single family home third-party property management company and ask them if they had any properties available. And then that property manager would have to tell them about the property. So that was number one. There was absolutely no marketing being done. There were people who were living in there who were paying $300 a month since 2003. So, there's just a lot of opportunity with the rent bumps. And there was just so much deferred maintenance. And sometimes you don't want to take on a property because it has too much. But this one, it was easily fixable, but the owner was just not putting money back in the property. So as soon as we put money back in the property, the residents loved it. They saw we liked the property. We were putting money back in the property. And actually, there were 16, this is just a smaller property, 42 units. There were 16 month-to-months when we took over. 14 of the 16 ended up staying because they loved what we were doing to the property.
Wow. So everyone, Kyle found the mom and pop, traditional mom and pop. Some of the keys, it was undermanaged. There's no management systems in there. They had a single family turnkey provider doing management for a multifamily. That should tell you everything right there. The rents were under market significantly. It seems like Kyle does a rent audit in 16 month-to-months. So there's some real, I wouldn't say when you get those month-to-months, it's a little scary because you don't know if they're going to sign up. It could be a blessing in disguise, but on your first deal, that might be difficult to see all those people leave, right? But I think Kyle had a system in place. And the last thing is deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance can be really daunting on your first deal, but there's also a ton of value that you can find on that deferred maintenance and say, let me put it in and dealing with it. So when you got this first deal on the contract and you've got it on, how long did it take you to reposition and start the whole process for you?
Yeah, so we just purchased this last May, so it's been about 8 months for us, and we're actually looking to position it for sale now. The original plan was to hold it for 5 years, but this has been like a perfect storm. We pushed the rents 3 times. We've been able to implement a premium unit that we were not anticipating, but we're getting the rents for that. And then number 3, the market's improved, right? We always plan on the market kind of getting worse over time, but the market has improved, cap rates have compressed, and it's put us in a position to where we could possibly sell in the summer. It's not for sure, but it's a possibility.
Did you raise money for this deal?
We did.
So give me some tips on raising capital. Where did you find the capital? How long did you take? And what was the amount that you needed to raise for this deal?
Yeah, so this is the first time I raised capital, and it's a really different game. I mean, there's raising capital and there's buying apartments, right? They're completely different from one another. And we were building our list, thankfully, for over a year and expanding our network. And I think that was key.
Very important, everybody. Yes, very important. I didn't mean to cut Kyle off. He's sourcing capital before the deal. Everyone says, I need a deal and then I need the money. No, you need to go out there, start looking for the money, start building your list. And as you're doing that, let's look for the deal. So very important. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but that's a really important topic that we have to discuss.
Yeah, no problem. I said earlier that if we would have gotten it after 6 months, we wouldn't have been ready. And that's why, it was not easy to raise the $1 million that we had to raise for our first deal. We got it done. It did take a month and a half. And at certain points of it, I wasn't sure if we were going to get there. And that is after, 12 to 18 months of building that list. So, a lot of those people, some were friends and family, a lot of them from the meetup that we were able to put together that we had been running for a year and expanding our network. But the number one thing about it is if you're going to be raising capital, you need to be telling everybody what you're doing. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be the guy at the checking stand at the store that you're at, just tell everybody what you're doing. And I think you expand your network much quicker after that.
I love that. You made a great point, Kyle, before, and I want to maybe see if you can expand upon it. You said there's a difference between buying apartments and syndicating or raising capital. And most people ask us, why do we buy our first 1,000 units by ourselves without raising capital? I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, because for us, it was just easy to buy deals without having to deal with investors. They're two different businesses. You really have to please your investors, and you sort of have to please the general partners. So for us, it was easy that if we didn't cash flow for a couple of months, hey, it's okay. We'll deal with it. But saying that to your investors might be a little difficult. Where do you see the difference between the apartment buying and the syndication business?
Yeah, I agree with you. I jumped straight into doing syndication, but the one thing I did do is we had partners on both of our deals that we've done so far, and they've had experience with the syndication piece, right? So I think that's really important. Certainly with syndication, there's so much more pressure on the sponsor because you have other people's money at work. And so you're a fiduciary to these investors, and you need to do what's right by them, not what's right by yourself, right?
Mhm.
Whereas if you buy your own stuff, you can kind of learn through the school of hard knocks and figure it out. And if you lose a little money, it's directly related to you. But my background has been in management and operations, and I felt very comfortable that once we closed on the apartment, my experience and my systems and my management background would allow us to follow out and execute our business plan.
So for us, we talk to Jake and Gino often about the three pillars of real estate: the market cycle, the debt, and the exit strategy. Those three are really important. Would your exit strategy be different if you had bought this just with you and a partner or two partners? Or is it different because you had to syndicate this deal and maybe take that big win, get a first full cycle deal? What are your thoughts on that?
I think now it would probably have ended up being the same because the market's improved so much and we've gotten
hmm
so much out of it. But I think the probably initial purchase of it would have been slightly different. We might have held
hmm
on to it longer and cash flowed off the property. That's the other thing is that you can choose what to do
hmm
with a property that you're buying yourself to benefit yourself. Like I
hmm
said earlier, this is all about the investors. So I'm thinking in my mind, the velocity of money for my investors, if we cash out now, they'd be able to pull out all their equity, put it into another deal where they're making even more money. And so is
hmm
it the right decision to do that now or hold on to the property? So there's a lot more to consider when you're syndicating a deal. And you can't really take into consideration your situation. You've just got to think about the investor situation and what is best for them.
Kyle, that's a great point. Thanks for sharing that. One other question that I have for you: what challenges did you have raising this money? I mean, give us some pain points. I mean, people saying, "I'm going to give you the money," then three weeks later, well, my daughter's getting married. I don't have the money for you. Any horror stories that really stick out to you?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, I always say that raising capital, you get a peek behind the curtains of people's lives because it's life, right? Someone's on vacation, someone's in the hospital, someone's having a baby. One horror story was I was following up with an investor that was interested, and literally that day his son had died, you know,
Oh,
and it was one of the worst conversations I've ever had. How do you even handle something like that,
hmm
and it just makes you realize that there's definitely other factors involved and life happens and there's other important things, but you've got to be sensitive to that and you've got to understand that you're working with other people's money and it's hard-earned money.
hmm
So that was definitely a difficult one. The other thing is that halfway through this raise we decided that we wanted to bring on another partner to help finish out the raise and bring on as a net worth and liquidity partner to set us up for future deals, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get there. In the end we would have gotten there, but if you don't raise all the money, you cannot finish out or execute your full business plan, right? So
hmm
that's not a situation I want to be in. And we had communicated that to the lender very early on that that's something that we were considering doing. And they shut us down. They said we already submitted the information to Freddie Mac, and they don't want to re-underwrite the deal and re-underwrite this new general partner coming in, so you can't do it. And we actually had to switch lenders last minute with 29 days left. We went Fannie Mae, completely different lender. It was a risky move. It turned out working. It worked out great for us in the end. I wouldn't want to go through it again, but we got an 81 basis point discount on our interest rate as well. We were able to bring that partner on, and 3 weeks after we closed on that property, we found our next property and we partnered on that next deal as well.
So I'm sorry, 3 months later?
Sorry, 3 weeks.
Oh, 3 weeks later. So, wow, they beat Jake and Gino. It took us 18 months to find our first deal, and then 3 months to find our second deal, and then about 6 months to find our third deal. So, talk about that. Why do you think it took you only 3 weeks to find the second deal?
Relationships. We had just closed on another deal. We brought in two partners on this deal, and one of those partners actually had this other deal brought to him by a broker. And he said, Kyle, I've got my W-2 job. I don't have time to underwrite this. Can you take a look? I underwrote it that day. The next day we were touring the property. It was before it was on market. The first day it went to market, we had an offer in and it was accepted that day. So it was taking action, but it was really the relationships between the broker and our partner.
So it's success and momentum and making it happen, because you didn't say, I'll wait a week till I underwrite this deal, right? You actually went out there, you underwrote it, and you got everything over ASAP. Do what you say and say what you do. This is a great story. Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsors.
Gino and I are super excited to tell you about the audiobook version of The Honeybee, which was recently released.
The Honeybee tells the story of Noah, a disappointed, disaffected salesman who feels like his life is going nowhere until the day he has a chance encounter with a man named Tom Barnum, the beekeeper. In his charming, down-home way, Tom, the bee man, teaches Noah and his wife Emma how to grow their personal wealth using the lessons he learned from his beekeeping passion.
In the audio version, Gino and I sat down for an exclusive interview after each chapter where we elaborate on the stings we felt throughout the business, the importance of scaling up, and how we've been able to create multiple streams of revenue.
For more information and to get your copy of the audiobook, visit jakeandgino.com/honeybee.
Okay, Kyle, so I got some short answer questions for you here. What is your favorite book you've ever read and why?
Reading it now, Shoe Dog, just an inspirational story and extremely well written.
So what do you like about the book?
He's just taking me through a story. Phil Knight has just written that book incredibly. Typically I read books on personal development that are, a lot of mindset, but this one is a story of how an entrepreneur worked hard, grinded, and went through so many different challenges to get to where he is. And I'm almost done with the book, so I haven't finished it, but it's just an inspirational book. And it just shows that you just got to have persistence, consistency, and work your butt off in order to be successful.
Awesome. That book's on my to-read list. Actually, I got to give a shout out to Jake and Gino community member, Gwaith Smith. He actually sent me that book. So thank you, Gwaith, and definitely excited to dive into that one as well. What about your best habit for success?
Yeah, I've been doing this for about 4 months now. I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning and I do the miracle morning, but it gets my day started out right. I'm not stressed out or rushed in the morning. I get to, spend time with my family, set myself up in the right mindset to set up the rest of my day.
Love it. All right. So there's been a lot of golden nuggets on this episode. I want to touch on a few of them, and I know, Gino, you're going to add to it. So the first one is limiting beliefs is what initially held Kyle back from getting into multifamily. And honestly, I believe that holds most people getting back from multifamily. But again, that is the opportunity because there's barriers to entry there. The next one was kind of putting the equity to use in his house. So Kyle, when you sold the house and you created a higher ROI, putting it into real estate investments. And then, our motto here, education times action equals results. Kyle got educated. He took not just action, but he took consistent targeted action. So that's something there. He knew that doing these actions over time is going to get results. And these weren't just actions that he made up. There's a huge difference between activity and accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
He learned from his mentor the right steps in the right order to get out there and make this happen. And then also the hockey stick curve of success. So starting out, it's kind of flat like a hockey stick, and then it up right there. And that's what it really looks like in life. And most people don't hold on long enough to make it to that 18 months to make it happen. And that's why it's the 1% and the 99%. Gino, what other takeaways do you have to add to this?
Well, I want to add what you just said about the motion in action. Kyle could have stayed home in Southern California and underwritten deals and talked to brokers over the phone. And that's motion. That's doing stuff, but that's not really doing the right stuff. Getting in the car and driving or flying or going on site, that's action. That's the right action that's going to lead to results. So early on in my career, when I was at the restaurant, washing the dishes, Josh, that was motion. I was really busy, hard work. But is that the right kind of action to take to scale the business and to bring in additional revenue? No, because those aren't the right actions. I was just doing motion. I thought I was being busy. It was busy work, but it wasn't actually, focused work. Kyle, if you can just add to the listeners, give them like a framework. If they come to you, if Gino comes to you and say, Kyle, how do I get into multifamily? How do I do what you did? Give me some steps, some real meat right now of I want to get into multifamily too, because I believe with the demographics, I believe this is the right model. What should I do for the next 6 months to get into it?
I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. And so he's all about modeling after others, right? And being around others who are doing what you're already doing. So number one, find out your niche of what it is you want to do. Because in multifamily, there's so many different things you can do. Raise money, underwrite, lead sponsor, asset management, whatever it is. Figure out what you want to do and then hang around the people who are already doing that at a much higher level. Go around them, see if you can add value to them, and then educate yourself. Every day when I was driving to work, I'm listening to 2.5 hours of podcasts. I'm reading books. I'm listening to Audible. I'm at the gym listening to more books. going to meetups after work, and networking with people, education. And then I've already hit on it, but it's about consistency. So whatever you do, do with intention. If you're going to start a newsletter, do it with intention. Think about it. What message do I want to get across to my audience? If you're going to do a meetup, what message do I want to get across to my audience? Who do we want there? And do everything with intention, but it's all about consistency.
I love that, Josh. Those are great tips. Thanks, Kyle. Number one is to find your niche. Find what you want to do in the multifamily space. You can buy the assets yourself and be the IMA and then start scaling up. Ultimately, you can't do everything. So finding what you really like, whether Kyle said raising the capital, having the net worth, maybe just being an LP in the beginning, just starting getting out and putting money into somebody else's deal to learn the process. That's really important. The number two, as my boy Josh likes to say, you either pay to play or you seek to serve. You either go out there and you find a mentor who can help you out and you add a ton of value, or you come and join a community like the Jake and Gino community, and you can surround yourself, and you need that environment. That environment will inspire you and will help you. And what Kyle did, which was genius, was he created his own environment. He created the meetups. He created the podcast. That's his environment. He's staying locked in. And number three, which I think is really important, Rod Cialdini talks about it all the time in influence, it's commitment and consistency. If you can commit to something and you're consistent, that's a way to influence yourself and to influence others. So when you become consistent with your actions, the brokers will take you seriously. When you get in the car and you drive 7 hours and you go look at properties, all of a sudden you're committing that to that endeavor, and you're being consistent, and they're going to take you seriously. So Josh, there's been a lot of golden nuggets. I think everyone needs to hit the pause and go back and listen to this one all over again, because Kyle's got tons of ideas on how to become successful in multifamily.
Yes. Kyle, how can the listeners get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. I think our website's the best spot, limitless-estates.com. We have a free passive investors guide for anyone interested in learning more about multifamily syndication and investing passively in syndication. It educates you through the process of what you should know before you get involved.
All right.
Awesome. Guys, I want to thank Kyle for being an amazing guest on the show and sharing his movers and shakers story. Now, if you want to be the next movers and shakers guest, email me, josh@jakeandgino.com. If you like the show, please leave us a review. And until next time, let's make it a movers and shakers week. See you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, guys.